So I was building a shooting berm, just not really paying attention, backing up, and kind of fell into my own hole and rolled my skid steer on its side.
Every man has his day, and our guest today has had one of those days in the past as well. In fact, it was so shitty that his skid steer rolled over. So we are going to dig into that and all other aspects of his business in just a moment. Before we get into introducing our guest today, I do want to take a moment just to remind anybody out there, if you're an excavation company owner and there's some parts of the business that you're struggling with, or you're not scaling at the speed you want to scale at, and you just have that gut feeling that there's got to be a better way or a different way to do it, go over to groundbreakinggrowth.com. So it's an affiliate of Skid Steer Nation. It's our program, and it's basically a consulting and coaching program where we work with you on the back end of the business, from sales and marketing to processes, anything in that regard to help you actually operate a business and get away from just having a job. So if that sounds intriguing to you, go learn more at groundbreakinggrowth.com. So today our guest is Jake. He owns a company called Above The Line Excavation. He's out in a little town just outside of Colorado Springs, Colorado. And like half the guys in this industry, he's a motocross junkie. So with no further ado, Jake, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here. Excited to get it going.
Yeah, so am I. I have to tell you, though, I did chuckle a fair amount, actually, when I saw the whole motocross reference. I mean, I feel like every other guy I talk to in this industry has like his roots somewhere in motocross.
Yeah, it seems to be a pretty common thing. Even people I talk to around the industry, dirt bikes are usually a topic somewhere in there.
Yeah, you guys are just such big thrill seekers. And I always find it humorous. I'm like, I get that you get to go work in the dirt, but you go from like ripping at what, 30, 40, 50, 80 miles an hour, depending on the track and the condition, to now crawling around at 4 miles an hour.
Right. Or slower.
Or slower. Yeah. Creep mode. So yeah, I was stalking you on Facebook. I say that every episode to every guest, I feel like. I mean, I got to find a new method of getting some information on you guys. Doesn't make me feel so shady.
Oh, that's all right.
But you do a ton of utility line work and trenching for water and utilities and electrical, right?
Yeah, quite a bit of that. Fortunately, I've met some people and got in with some people that kind of feed me a lot of that work. So it's really cool. I actually enjoy installing water lines, sewer lines. We've even done electric and all kinds of stuff, gas lines, you name it. I've probably put it in the ground.
That's fantastic. So are you getting most of that work as a subcontractor on a larger project, or is this direct with the end user?
Yes, most of it's from another contractor. I kind of got in with them pretty well, and I've known them from before. So once they kind of took over another guy's company, actually, I kind of found my way in there, and they feed me quite a bit of work. So that's been really nice.
That's fantastic. So you started, I believe, 2019?
Yeah, late 2019 is when it all kind of started to really come together. And that's kind of when I went out all full force.
Did you have a vision for the services that you wanted to offer, or did you just say, I want to go do excavation?
Honestly, I didn't exactly even have a vision. I just, a little bit of backstory. I had a property with a bunch of trash on it that I bought for myself personally. So to clean that up, what's the best way other than machinery, So that's kind of how it snowballed into it. And then from there, I just kind of dove in with both feet, not really knowing where it'd take me. So,
yeah. What were you doing? What were you doing for work before you dove in?
So I did a lot of motorcycle mechanic work, worked for a few race teams and stuff like that. I had also worked at an excavation company before, and then at a event center, and one of my buddies there, he taught me how to run equipment. So that's kind of where I got my start in operating a loader, moving dirt with a dump truck, just things like that.
Yeah, nice. I have to assume that the mechanic background pays dividends, owning a bunch of equipment.
It's definitely helpful. Some days it's definitely kind of annoying too, because now I have to fix everything.
Yeah. But it's a double-edged sword for sure.
Yeah.
But it's got to be nice to not be at the mercy of the service department from the local dealer to say, we'll see you in 3 weeks.
That's definitely nice. And I feel like I can kind of explain things to even this, I've had some encounters with the service department and I'm able to explain what's going on or where my issues are and maybe give them a little more insight than some others would be able to.
Yeah, you got to definitely have to have clearer conversations with your background. So that's fantastic. Do you work year round? I mean, you're out in Colorado and it doesn't get terribly cold there though, does it?
Sometimes in the winter it gets fairly cold. Today's a little bit colder and windy, but especially out where I'm at, I'm kind of in the plains, so it's a little windier, but it also less snow, the snow kind of blows around out here. So some of my friends that live further up north will call me, we got a foot of snow. And I'm like, it's just windy here. Like it's not windy and cold. It's really snowing. So
nice. But how late into the year can you dig trenches?
So last year I dug trenches almost all year long. I think in November it snowed and that's when the ground kind of froze up. And then probably about February timeframe, I started opening trenches up pretty regularly again.
I feel like everybody has this idea that Colorado, like, because you got the mountains and the snow and everyone goes there to ski. It's like, oh, they got a long winter. And I'm like, man, here in the Midwest, like we get that deep freeze temperatures and that ground gets frozen up to like 20 inches, 25 inches. Right. And like, you ain't doing shit till
you're not
April.
Getting through it.
No.
And I've definitely ran into that problem before, it's happened and I've had to get ripper shanks and stuff to try and break the ground up, but fortunately it's not too often.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And then if I remember correctly, you pretty much run this company all by yourself, right? You've got some part-time help from time to time, but it's not consistent day in, day out, right?
Yep, exactly. It's just me mostly. When I started, it was just me. And then I had a few employees at the time. One of them went to school and one of them went to work in another industry. So good for them. And it works out being kind of my own boss and my own employee, my own worst enemy at times. But
I know the feeling. And I'm always curious, like with guys, like in yourself, that you're the core employee of the business. Like, right. Is that, because to me, success is whatever you want it to be. Firm believer in that, right? So are you at your level of success or do you have aspirations of growing it into multiple employees, crews, or like what's your perfect vision of your business?
I'd say I'm comfortable, but I definitely see it going way further, growing a little bit. I don't know if I necessarily want to be the next Martin Marietta or something like that, but I definitely like to grow it, have some more employees, get more equipment, stuff like that.
Very nice. Very nice. And then I have to ask, because I'm going through this process myself personally, but like, is this a dream or do we have actionable goals and timelines set up to make it a goal?
I would say it's my goal. I mean, it was a dream, but it's definitely, what I'm all in on. I've kind of left the motorcycle scene and doing a little more horse things. I like team roping a lot, but that's just kind of my supplement on the side to keep me distracted when I don't need to be working 24/7.
Yeah, you got to have that, man. You got to have that balance.
Yeah, so excavation is definitely my, my pathway and what I like to do and where it's going to keep going.
Nice. And how long have you been hooked up with that contractor that's feeding you a bunch of utility work?
So crazy story, actually. The guy I originally worked for with his company, worked for him, and one of his operators actually took over his company when he retired. And that's the guy who feeds me quite a bit of work. So even to this day, actually the gentleman that used to own that company, he called me yesterday and has a couple jobs that we're going to work on next week. So it's kind of cool that I've been able to keep those resources and hopefully help them out too.
That's awesome. But how long have you guys been kind of partnering on those projects?
The main one that I partner with, probably about 2.5 years or so. We've been kind of teaming up and working together on a lot of projects.
Do you find, knowing that he's going to be calling, you've got to be at a point where you kind of have an idea of how many projects you're going to have a month working with him?
Yeah, usually
Yeah.
it is kind of comforting to know like I don't necessarily have to worry about finding a job tomorrow to, pay my bills. But at the same time, I still like to do my own thing a little bit. So I try and kind of keep it balanced as a little bit of my own stuff and a little bit of their work as well.
Yeah. And do you find you're more successful in closing those projects that you're doing solely on your own because you don't have that need of like, I need this job?
I would say so. When I first started, I guess pretty much like everybody, you kind of take what you can get. But now it's to the point where if I really don't want the job, I'll kind of be honest with the customer and saying this is out of my wheelhouse, or I need to pass it on to someone else who would better fit completing your job other than me.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. It's so crazy, like how, when you have the right mindset, it's just like more and more flows to you. And it really,
Right.
it's not so much that flows to you, it's just that you get out of your own way.
That's pretty much it. I kind of, this past year has really been I wouldn't say like a non-growing year, but just for me, it's been a growth. I've learned to let go of some certain things like trucks break, tires blow out. Some days just aren't going to happen like you want them to. And I've really kind of took to letting go of that a little bit and not being so frustrated or why me or something like that.
Mm-hmm. And I don't know how philosophical you get and all that, but I was reading a book the other day, and like this guy's perspective on it is that the universe always balances out. Like when you go through a drought, then you get a rainy season. Like Mother Nature always balances out. Our lives always balance out. So when things are going terrible and crappy and it seems like nothing's going right, like there's going to be an upswing. It can't continue to be that way. But then
Right.
we forget that when things are going great, downturn's coming.
Oh yeah. I've definitely forgot that myself a few times, but
Yeah. So it's like just a perspective of like, oh yeah, we're always going to have balance. So like, no matter how great things are going, like let's be prepared.
right. And I think that's this past year has really done that for me. I just I kind of have a grasp on everything. Everything's in a decent place. I wouldn't say the best place or where I want it to be, but things aren't going haywire. I kind of have a grip on all of it. So that's a nice
Yeah.
thing.
And Jake, I'm going to assume that you're just like myself and most other business owners. I mean, we want what we want tomorrow, but when we look back where we started 3 years ago, we were like, God, I've came a long way.
Right. Yeah. And actually, even before the show, I kind of was just thinking back. It's like, wow, I've done a lot of crazy things, bought a lot of new pickups, equipment, what you name it, hand tools or whatever, just it's grown quite a bit. And it's cool to look back on and see that.
Yeah, it is really cool. You know what I love about the excavation industry is, I mean, it's granted it's pricey, all the equipment's expensive and all that, but I mean, there's very few service-based businesses that you actually own a fair amount of assets.
Right. Yeah, I do think
and
it's pretty cool machines and stuff. I mean, obviously we all love it, but
right.
it's cool to be like your own machine in your yard. I can walk out my door and look at my equipment if I want. So that's cool.
And I just remember like when a guy, it was a couple of years ago, he called me up. He was thinking about transitioning from doing solely grading work and getting into some land clearing and brush clearing.
Right.
And he was looking at a used disc mulcher attachment for a skid steer.
Okay.
He's just like, I want to buy it. He's like, but man, it's 12 grand. And I'm like, well, let's do the numbers on it. Right. Like put pen to paper.
Right.
And it figures out like you can buy this and go try it. And if it's not an avenue you want to go at, you sell it for 12 grand again. Like,
yep.
It's not a $12,000 attempt.
Right. And I think that's another nice thing that's really helped me out is, if something were to happen tomorrow or I decided I want to do something different, which I don't think will happen, but I guess there's always that possibility that, I can still sell my equipment or sell my trucks or, they're still worth money, even if it's.
Yeah. I mean, I think the richest people on the planet are all rich on paper. I mean, they're probably more rich on paper than they are cash heavy.
I believe that fully.
Yeah. What kind of work were you doing before you kind of dialed in with the utility work?
So before that, I kind of a little bit of everything, a bunch of driveways, grading driveways or cutting them into new properties, some building pads, just more general excavation stuff like that.
Yeah. And were you struggling without having like a set niche of something you're focused on to like stay consistent?
I wouldn't say I was necessarily struggling, but I just wasn't, there'd be a month where I'd make a gob of money, and then the next month I didn't make too much money. And it's kind of now I don't have to worry about the such highs and such lows. It's kind of just constant.
Constant.
So
Yeah.
I always have like money coming in or jobs going on or stuff like that.
Yeah. And I think that's a telltale story of like what happens when you, like most guys, when you start, you don't know the niche that you're going to end up in. And like, you kind of have to go through that maturation process of figuring it out and being a jack of all trades. Exactly. And then when the opportunity comes, if it's the right one, move forward with it. But I preach to everybody, I'm like, always be looking for what your niche is going to be, whether, grading, utilities, septics, land clearing.
I think there's even room for the, right now utilities is kind of my niche, but there's room for other niches and areas that I kind of want to pursue or something in the future. So I think it's always evolving, really.
And it is, but the biggest thing that I try to highlight is that a customer needs to know who you are and what you do.
Right.
And like, look, if you're not working with contractors, most people out there, if you say I have an excavator, they have no clue what the capabilities of that machine are, or what projects are a good fit for that machine.
I'll definitely agree to that.
But if you say I install septic systems, they go, oh, got it.
And they kind of have a link to it.
Yep. It's that connection for the customer. And I've seen so many guys in this industry and other industries is like when they get rid of, like we call it the noise, when they get rid of the noise and they find their focus and double down on just their focus.
Right.
Like the growth rate isn't 2x, it's like 10x.
Right. Yeah. It starts to skyrocket at that point.
Yeah, it really does. It sure does. Sorry, it was just phone is nonstop for a Friday afternoon. No, I can't believe it.
Some days it happens.
Weird. I was talking to a guy earlier doing an interview, and like his phone was just like, and I'm like, I love it. You're busy.
Right. Yeah. I'm kind of surprised mine hasn't gone off yet, but thank God.
we jinxed it. It's going to start going off like crazy now.
It might.
Like, don't they know it's Friday afternoon?
Yeah.
So I'm always intrigued to hear, like, you said you were a mechanic on the motocross teams. Were you semi-pro or pro when you were in motocross, or was it more of just a hobby?
Yeah. So I started racing as a little kid, single digits, 8, 9, 10 years old. I started racing and then raced all the way through high school. And in high school, I actually broke my elbow or shattered my elbow. And so at that point in time, it's kind of like, well, racing's not going to be forever. So that's when I decided to go to school in Arizona at MMI, the Motorcycle Mechanics Institute. So I did that. It took me about a year and a half, maybe 2 years. And then once I graduated from there, I kind of went all the way back into racing. So I did it for quite a few more years, went pro, raced some national races and stuff. But as anyone in the motocross industry could probably tell you, there's not too much money to be made, especially if you're not the 1% of the 1% guy,
Yeah. And what did you ride? Were you on dirt bikes or quads?
Yeah, dirt bikes. So mostly Suzuki's during my time, but Kawasaki's. And then I also worked for Yamaha after I kind of took a step back from racing and worked for Suzuki again after that. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
And it's my number one question to ask anyone in motocross. How many broken bones have you had?
A lot.
That's the common answer I get back in response.
Both legs, both feet, an arm, collarbones, hands, you name it. I've broke it or hurt it or have a story about it probably.
Yeah. And if you were to like develop arthritis in one of those areas that you broke, knowing that you could go back in time and not race motorbikes to not have that problem, would you still race?
I think so. I mean, looking back, I guess I'd be a lot smarter about it, but at the same time, I'm pretty thankful for all those experiences. I've got to travel the US at least, and even kind of part of the world for racing motocross or wrenching for other guys. So I don't think I'd want to give those experiences up.
Yeah, I tell you what, all you guys, it's like it's literally at the heart of who you are. Nobody ever says they would have not raced.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think I'd go back and change too much of it, honestly.
Yeah. When you vacation, do you vacation around quads or dirt bikes or anything like that?
I used to for sure. Now, like I said, it's kind of, I don't know if it's just getting older or kind of getting out of it. I mean, don't get me wrong, I still watch races and stuff, but I do like a lot of the horse stuff now. I watch rodeos a lot, and so that I've kind of changed in that way. I've went down just a little bit of a different path.
Yeah. Do you feel that your excavation company is going to mature into the horse game also? I mean, there's a lot of money in horses and there's a lot of dirt work.
Yeah, so in a little bit, yeah. I mean, I've definitely worked on some arenas and stuff like that for some people, but at the same time, I don't have like an arena tractor or anything myself. So I've kind of, actually just recently I passed on a job to somebody else because it was like, well, one, he can beat my price tenfold, and two, his equipment's set up for that stuff, and mine's mostly just for moving dirt and getting utilities in the ground. It's not really set up for the arena stuff, but I
Yeah.
do see it a bit.
It just sounds like a natural fit for you with your passion for that lifestyle and the animals, then being able to take the
Right.
dirt work passion too, and just kind of like marry them together and like be around the horses while you do the dirt work. And
That's definitely where it's started to travel to now. So
yeah.
that's cool.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but like that's pretty tight knit community too, right? Like,
Yeah, it seems to be. I'm pretty new to it all, but I just kind of, like with anything I've ever done, I kind of take it and jump in and figure it out. And yeah, I've learned that most of those people, like if you can get on their good side or do good work for them, they will help keep that going for a long time.
yeah, and like if you do work for one ranch owner and another ranch owner hears about it and it's similar to what he needs done, like that's the guy I want to do it. So, and it's just that tight little circle.
Exactly.
Yeah, those are the best niches to get into is when the customers do the selling for you.
It really is. I mean, don't get me wrong. I like going to jobs and meeting with customers, but having someone call and just say, "Hey, I need this done on this day," is like, okay, done deal. It's no questions, no getting someone else involved. It's just kind of get the work done and get to it.
Yeah, and I'm just talking about like the word of mouth. Like,
Oh yeah.
if you have 5 great customers that you've done work for, and they're out telling everybody that you did the job, and there couldn't be any happier on that, and another ranch owner calls you because that's like, let's just hypothetically say that's what it was.
Right.
Like, hey, I heard you did that job for Mary Smith down the road. I want you to come look at the same type of project on my ranch. Like, there's zero acquisition cost in grabbing that customer. The likelihood of him of getting a second bid is low.
Exactly. It helps out tremendously. Word of mouth is so big in this business, and I know everyone preaches it, but it truthfully has taken me from the ground to where I'm at now, really.
Yeah, I went through a period where I was like all in on the internet and I was preaching it to even guys like yourself, like, oh, you got to have your Google set up, your website, your ads on this, and it's all you need, right? And I came out of that phase going, it's not that complicated. Like, make good connections, talk to people, put some yard signs in high visible spots.
Exactly.
Have a website, and I see yours is powered by GoDaddy. Did you build it yourself?
So I did build my website myself. Even like this hoodie, I made this myself. So when I did some dirt bike work, I worked at a graphics company for a period of time. So the logo you see is something I made. Just learning to design, or
Yeah,
it's pretty much all my own. So even my website, like you said.
but again, like we don't need to spend $2, $3, $10,000 on a web developer to build some custom website. We just need a place people can go read a little bit about you.
Exactly. And it's a little bit outdated now, but I built that website in the middle of the night at my dad's house a few years ago, just
Yeah.
kind of what I needed
And
at the time, and I did it.
had you built a website before?
I had messed around with building a website, but I hadn't actually like built one.
So if you were talking to another excavation company owner that was petrified of building a website but didn't want to spend the money, GoDaddy's pretty simple to use, isn't it?
Oh yeah, I did it off a cell phone, so it's not it it took me probably, I'd say, 2 days in total working on it for 2 or 3 hours a day, and it wasn't too challenging to make it look presentable and nice in my opinion.
Yeah, the tools they have out there now, like for what most guys need for a company website, it's you can do it yourself, or you can find somebody in your family that is a little bit better at writing or something like that to help you with it.
Right. And honestly, how I built it, I just went and looked at a bunch of other people's websites and what I liked about them, what I didn't like about them, what I could take from them. I tried not to take any of their wording or anything, but kind of bring
So
some points into my own.
that's a great. I can kind of geek out on marketing every now and then, but I just want to mention this real quick. Like that's a tested strategy. Like even for us, like our groundbreaking growth website.
Right.
If I showed you my mentor's website, you'd be like, "Oh, it looks just like his." I'm like, "Yeah, he spent a ton of money to figure out where this picture fits best, and looking at heat maps to
Right.
get the most acquisitions, and like what color button gets more people to click it."
Right.
So why wouldn't I copy and mimic?
Yeah. And it's free information, really. I mean, I think if you're doing it in the way of you're not just taking his work, but you're mimicking it or using strong points from it, I feel like it's kind of free information. And why wouldn't you take advantage of that?
Right. It's just like the layout of it.
Right.
I'm not using his wording and stuff, but like
Right.
if he's got it structured out where the testimonials are second or third on the page, but by God, I'm putting my testimonials second or third. Like he's got it there for a
Right.
reason.
Yeah, he's figured it out and kind of done the footwork of it.
Yeah. And then on Skid Steer Nation, like I remember reading something and I was laughing because I'm like, how come I never thought about that? But how much money do you think Amazon spent developing the color of the buy now button?
Oh, lots.
Right. So I was like, well, why wouldn't my buy now button be the same color as Amazon's? People are programmed to click it.
Right. And they already know what it looks like.
They already know what it looks like. It's yeah. And you can pull a lot of that stuff. I just find companies that are really good at what they do. It doesn't matter what niche they are. And like you can copy the framework.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. But yeah, that Amazon button, I was just like, how many times have I hit that? I don't know. Why did it never cross my mind to like put our button?
All the time. I didn't even think of that, but it makes perfect sense.
Yeah. It's right in front of us. We didn't see it.
Right.
Oh man. So just kind of backtrack here. You've got like a goal of growth, some more equipment, a couple employees, all of
Right.
that. Like what do you feel is the first step in that process for you?
It's kind of a tough question. I mean, I've grown since I've started quite a bit. At first it was just a skid steer, and I bought another truck and paid that off, and bought another equipment trailer and paid that off, and bought an excavator. So it's been building. And right now I'm just trying to figure out what that next building step is. I thought it was trucking for a while, but fortunately and unfortunately, I'm pretty in with some people who have trucking companies. So for me to go buy a truck isn't really going to step my game up as much as I would hope it would.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm trying to navigate maybe a different piece of equipment or something like that instead of.
Are you getting close to the point of owning so much equipment that it's like, shit, I actually need more people before I need more equipment?
That's kind of how it's getting to. Like I said, I've had some employees in the past and I get a day laborer here and there, but it's almost to the point now where like I need kind of a right-hand man or someone that I can
Yeah.
give half my workload to.
But it's, I mean, to me, it just makes no sense to have four pieces of operatable equipment, two loans on two of them, and then only you to determine, like, only using one at a time.
Exactly. And that's, like I said, kind of where I'm at right now. Fortunately, with the other contractor, sometimes he'll rent my equipment from me, which helps offset the cost a little bit. But I
Mm-hmm.
also don't like just letting anyone rent my equipment. It needs to make me money, not them necessarily.
Yeah. I don't like renting equipment because nobody treats it right.
Exactly. It's a scary thing. Even my pickup trucks, like, it's like they're not super nice trucks, but I don't want them ragged on. And, I'm sure, as everyone in this industry knows, diesel trucks do have a little bit of power. And someone who's not used to that is probably not the best to just throw in your truck and have them pull a skid steer around or something.
Right. Right. Is yours deleted?
Yeah, all my trucks are.
I'll tell you what, I've got an F-350 and it's got, I mean, a ton of power, right? It's like we go up I don't know, probably a 6-7% grade hill by the house here. And like the RPMs don't change when you're hauling 17,000 pounds or whatever. I love it. But my buddy's got a dually version of it same year and he deleted his and he's like, go take it for a drive. And I'm like, what's all this? Like, why would, I don't want to delete my truck. Warranty's voided. This is like, I don't see any positive. And I'm not a motocross guy, so I really don't care about
going.
I got in that damn thing and hit the gas pedal, and I couldn't believe how fast it threw me in the back of that seat.
Oh yeah, it'll take you from 0 to 100 miles an hour pretty quickly.
I mean, it broke tread, and I'm like, "There's 4 tires."
Yeah,
like
dry pavement.
Yeah, I was like, "Wow!" I mean, I was in awe at just the raw power.
Right.
When you deleted it, Speaking of rental equipment and treating it like garbage, you had a day where you treated your skid steer like it was a rental piece of equipment.
Yeah, unfortunately. So on my property, I have 40 acres and it's in my yard and my test grounds, my dump site, or whatever you want to call it. I have it all here. But so I was building a shooting berm for myself. How I had it set up, I was kind of stepping the dirt. And so I could get on top of one part of it and stack higher, and just not really paying attention, backing up, and kind of fell into my own hole and rolled my skid steer on its side. It was pretty scary, crazy at first, but once I figured out that I was okay and nothing too badly was hurt or damaged, then it was something to laugh about after that.
Yeah. Did you bang your head or get beat up at all on the inside of that?
Not too bad. So I had been in the skid steer before. Well, one I rented prior to me owning one, and like shattered the window out and got my whole arm in with glass. So I'd been in that kind of situation before, but yeah, once I kind of figured out, like, I'm not bleeding anywhere, nothing's broken, like nothing's even really bent, like, all right, everything's okay. So
yeah. So as a single owner operator, you're sitting out there, your skid steer is either on its side or upside down, and you're sitting there looking at it. What was your plan of action to get it out?
I didn't really have one. I was kind of in shock, like I just bought this, well, probably a month or two prior, I just bought this skid steer, brand new, and now it's on its side. But so I couldn't, at the time I didn't really know what to do. And I just called a buddy that was down the street and I was like, hey, can you come help me out? My skid steer is flipped over. So he came and helped me out. And eventually I had another buddy come and help. And we kind of linked a truck to it, tried to pull it, wouldn't really work. And then put another truck to that truck and tried to pull it, didn't exactly work. And finally the third truck, and I think there's 4 people, including me, in the skid steer, and then 3 of them with trucks. And we kind of got it pulled out of the ditch and back on its tracks.
Oh yeah. Those are always fun days, man.
Yeah, it's quite the learning experience for sure.
How much damage to the machine?
Not too bad, really. I've kind of known what to do. I let it sit, didn't just start it right away or anything. When it first happened, I shut it off immediately. So I was prepared in that way. Put a couple scratches on the side of it and The hook I actually I used a D-ring, one of the back hooks, and when I pulled it up, it bent the D-ring, so I had to cut the D-ring off. And that actually, I like got the side of the hooking point with the grinder, and that's the most damage that I did basically is
And
cutting
everything
off.
operational, undercarriage is fine, powerhouse runs fine.
Yeah, it all seemed all right. I did get it checked over by Cat just to make sure, but they were like, no, it seems all good to go. It wasn't on its side for too long and stuff like that. So fortunately,
Nice.
it's good.
Nice. How does owning a business affect your personal life? Like, is it a balancing act that you've got to like take time and be present with the people important in your life? Or
I would say it definitely used to be. It was just hard for me to, I kind of dove all in on the excavation thing, and that's what I did. If I couldn't sleep at night, I'd go try and learn more or do something about it, or I just worked a ton. But now I've kind of taken that step back and I'm able to disassociate the two a little bit. So I'd say now it doesn't affect my personal life that much. I mean, half my friends are in the industry anyway, so
yeah,
I'm never going to get away from it. But at the same time, I feel like a lot of us can kind of push work to the side and still hang out with friends, or vice versa, push the friends to the side and still go to work.
I just think that's like, I mean, again, it's the biggest struggle for any business owner is like you're working and building this business to have a better quality of life. But if we're not careful, it'll actually erode our life because it ruins off our relationships. And we're so laser focused on one area that other areas of our life, our health starts failing because we're not working out or eating well. And, the wife or girlfriend's not happy because when you are home, all you want to do is sleep or answer emails. And I just find it's a tough balance sometimes owning a business.
It definitely is. And I think it took me a little while to figure that out. But now that I have a grasp on it, it's in a good place. I don't, like I said, a lot of my friends are in the industry somehow. Some of them work at the John Deere dealership or do other things in the kind of excavation world. So that's a little bit, I'm always going to be around it or talking about it. But I feel like we're pretty good at kind of, let's go enjoy this concert or something that has nothing to do with work and put work aside for a minute. Or on the other hand, let's not worry about the fun stuff and let's get this job done. And
I got some friends here locally, and they actually had their own excavation companies. And last winter, they made the decision to merge into one excavation company and be partners.
right.
And I talk to them pretty regularly and do some things with them. But I can't. I mean, and they're Midwest country kids. Like one guy was a motocross nut guy, the other guy was a Marine, and like they grew up on farms or out in the middle of nowhere. And I call them up all the time, and I'm like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "I we didn't have any jobs today, so we're golfing." And I'm like, "You fucking guys own golf clubs?" He's like, "Yeah, they were my dad's or my grandpa's." And I'm like, "How good are you at golf?" They're like, "Oh, we're awful."
Yeah.
Like, but they're finding ways to just go out and like have some fun and not be all business.
Right. And that's with my property too. I still have a track and not too many big bikes anymore, but I have a little pit bike. So sometimes I'll just go take a lap or, just get out of my own way for a little bit and try and keep the two a little bit separate.
Yeah. I find doing that stuff like that too. Like for you, maybe taking a lap, if you're struggling through something in the business and you can't find the solution you're looking for, does it sometimes come to you after you disengage and like go do an activity?
It definitely does. I'd say when I'm not like, say I'm trying to figure something out, I'll think about it for hours and can't come to a conclusion. And then I'll be driving down the road, going to a friend's house or something. And it's like, it just pops up to you, it's completely random, or like I said, taking a lap or just doing whatever that's kind of completely disassociated with excavating is usually when it comes back to you.
Yeah, it really does. It's, I struggle with that too, because I want to sit there and find the answer.
Yeah.
And I'm not leaving. I mean, I'm not going to bed. I'm not leaving, whatever it is. And then as soon as you do and you get up, you go for a walk or hit the gym or something like that, you're like, oh, I think I know the path I need to go. I think I know the path I need to go on this.
Exactly. I'm the exact same way.
Yeah. I'm the first one to raise my hand and say I am the biggest bottleneck in my business.
That makes two of us.
I'm the first one to go. That's me. Do you outsource any of your back end business?
A little bit. So like now, like I talked about earlier, my taxes were kind of a problem for me. Hoping and praying I have it figured out now, and have a good tax person behind me that I think she's going to be a big help to me. But a little bit of that stuff, and then my mom does a little bit of my office kind of work, the daunting tasks that some of us don't like.
Most of us.
Yeah, most of us. So she does a lot of like the emails, and there's different places require different requirements or licenses and stuff. So it's like I can just say, hey, can you email this person this, or send this over there, or can you scan this in the computer for me? So that's probably the most I really send it out.
Yeah. So did you learn anything going through the whole process with your taxes? Like, do you have a list of questions that you had to rely on to find the right tax person? Or did you, like, how much research did you have to do?
So at first I kind of had a list of questions, and I had I guess I had some questions even before I started excavating. I did a little bit of mechanic work and kind of my own business before then. So I had an idea of it. I just hadn't really dove all in, certain things you don't think about. Like, yes, of course I need insurance, but what kind of insurance? Or does this insurance cover that insurance? Or, so those questions I definitely had like written down and kind of researched to figure out. But once I got past that point, it kind of became a little easier. And I think this year, now that I found this person, and she was just suggested to me by another business owner.
Yeah.
But when I found her, she definitely was like, no, I can answer most of these questions that you still have, and kind of made everything make sense of what I had going on.
Yeah. I personally, because, like, let's be honest, you don't know what you don't know. So even if I were to go, like, if I was starting a business this year and had to go meet with somebody like a bookkeeper or an accountant, I would have no idea what questions to ask them.
Yeah, exactly.
So, like, I have, and I did this with my financial advisor and like everybody else, but I utilize it now in other areas too. So I get to the point now where I'm like, walk me through how you do this and what another business similar to mine would need to do. And like, cause I don't know what questions to ask you, but I want you to lead me enough that I can generate some questions and like figure out things that I don't know.
Right. And I think that's kind of how I was led to this. Obviously, someone gave me her name and number, but once I was able to talk to her, it was kind of like, here's what I'm looking for, here's what I want. Is that possible? How did I get here? From my taxes from the previous year. Like, can you help me make sense of all this? And it's like I can add and subtract and stuff, and I know how much money I made, but and spent. How does that benefit me, or how do I depreciate it? Like I didn't know any of that stuff. And so
Well,
now
yeah,
that
I
it's
mean, but again, like if you owned, like, I knew a guy that owned a farm and an excavation company.
right.
And I was like, who owns your equipment? Like, what do you mean? I'm like, your farm, like, talk to your accountant, but I think your farm can own that and lease it to your excavation company. And it's going to be a huge tax savings for you. And he calls me back a week later. He's like, yeah, that's exactly what I can do. And I'm like, cool. She said, yeah, I could do that for you. And I was like, why didn't you offer it to me originally? She's like, we never asked me about it. Again, you don't know what you don't know, right? I'm like,
You can ask a question you don't even know about.
so I was like, that to me would have been a red flag. Like, I need somebody who's a little more aggressive and forthcoming.
And I think that's my red flags from, the previous people, not to say anything bad about them, but, if I call someone and they don't return my call for 2 weeks, it's kind of like, you could at least call me back,
100%.
would have saved a lot of headache. So,
I know I'm not your largest client, but I am a client. Please.
no.
Like, anything you want to talk about while we're just sitting here?
I don't think so. I mean, just if anyone's thinking of taking the leap, do it. But I'd say do your research and have an accountant or some tax people help you out before you just dive in, because if you have to dig yourself out of that hole, it's kind of a pain.
Yeah, it's a big pain. Very big pain. Well, excellent, man. I think we covered a bunch of great topics, and
Yeah, awesome. It was awesome.
I really enjoyed our conversation today. So thank you very much for joining the show today and carving that out.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and I really appreciated talking about it all and even getting some insight for to move forward.
Yeah, I just found that I can have a picture of the big goal, but if I don't break it down into small, achievable, bite-sized pieces, I'll never hit the big goal.
Never going to be able to climb the ladder.
Yeah. Like, oh, I want to have 1 million website visitors a month. Well, how do I get 250,000 a week? Like, let's, and then from that, how do we get 30,000 a day? Like, what's the break it down so you can actually hit that stuff? So cool, man. Right. Well, Jake, I look forward to watching and seeing your business grow and what direction you end up taking this in and what's next in your ventures. So be watching from afar.
Perfect. I appreciate it. And thanks for your time.
Yeah, you're welcome. Guys, if you're still listening to us today, don't forget Skid Steer Nation is also an e-commerce store, which is a website store, and we sell skid steer attachments. They're all made right here in the United States. They're all made by family-owned manufacturers. They're all built like brick shit houses. We have everything from buckets, grapples, augers, trenchers, you name it, across the board. So head over to skidsteernation.com to find your next attachment and become a little bit more efficient with your job. Until next week, guys, have a great day.